So once again, we're back talking about more Dreamworks animated TV shows. Because a little while ago we talked about the finale of the Kung Fu Panda Dragon Knight series, and how over the course of its run, the show went from bad to okay to genuinely good, to fun and entertaining. And that's sort of what we've got in our hands here. Because when Dragons the Nine Realms first dropped, it was bad. Lifeless voice acting, bland setting, cringy characters and scripts, just nothing that you want to be watching if we're being real. Like, it just wasn't good. If they were going to make a How to Train Your Dragon show, why would they set it in the modern day? Why would they have such badly written characters, such stupid storylines? It basically just felt like store brand Hiccup and Toothless, and, everybody else was irrelevant. And yet, over the course of the story, the course of the show's run, the quality has improved quite a lot. And when I say that, I really mean it. It has improved so much. But of course, you'd have to hope so, considering there's been 7 seasons now? And it's only just starting to cook now, in season 7? Whew. And clearly, the ending of this season's a major cliffhanger. There's going to be more to come. Probably a season 8, maybe a season 9, maybe beyond, who knows? After all, it's called the Nine Realms. Maybe it does finish after 9 seasons, maybe not. But I think there is a lot of stuff they can do with this show. But yeah, they've had a lot of seasons to iron out these issues. They've only just started to get on top of things. And yet, problems still do exist. And so, whilst this season was a step forward in quality, it's also still kind of painfully boring at times, and a chore to sit through, with characters that most of the time you can't really connect with. But yeah, let's jump into things. Okay, so the plot itself was decent enough, I suppose. Picking up sometime after the big betrayal that capped off the end of the last season, this arc revolved around the villain Buzzsaw, the insane Dragon King, teaming up with the disgraced and exiled Dr. Sludkin to try and defeat the Dragon Riders and uncover the secret of the hidden dragon from deep within the Nine Realms by using Hiccup's Book of Dragons. With the other overarching story of the season being the breakdown of the team of Dragon Riders and their interpersonal relationships. And of course, there's also the individual episode storylines. But this time, all of those individual episode storylines, they did tie back into those two overarching themes. And this wasn't always the case in previous seasons. Some episodes back then tended to go off in weird tangents that didn't really have anything to do with the main story at all, and didn't add anything to the show or the characters. And thus it would feel very boring and disconnected as a result. Because when you have so few episodes in a season, you really do have to make them count. And focusing an episode entirely on a side story that won't have any consequences going forward, that just ain't it. And so it was good that they didn't do that really during the course of this season. They tried to flesh out the story as much as they could. And obviously each episode would still have its own individual arc, but those stories were in service to a larger narrative thread that links all these minor stories together, which I thought was pretty good. And so in terms of the narrative design, of the flow of the season itself, much improved. Quite well done. Is it perfect? No, not all the time. Because whilst the battle against Buzzsaw felt right, I do think the team breakup felt way too long. It lingered way too long. I know it was only a handful of episodes, but it felt like it lasted forever. And so by the end of things, I'm muttering under my breath, oh, just get over it, mate. Literally whenever they fight, that's what I was saying. And not in the good way. Not in the good way of, oh, I hope my favourites overcome the drama and be friends again. I'm so invested in this. But more in the way of, oh, this is really annoying me. Cut that shit out, make up, or go away. And so whilst the arc did have that intended effect of making me upset, it didn't have the right reason behind that upset, if that makes sense. Instead of making me want to keep watching to find out what happens next and hope they reconcile, it just made me want to turn off. But that being said, the storyline, whilst tedious at times, was also good at points. I enjoyed when D'Angelo ripped them all a new one, because it was good to see the show finally acknowledge these characters' shortcomings. Tom's desire to always be in charge, to always be in command and always be right, to be the hero. The fact that Eugene is just the most selfish person in existence, although the show has always acknowledged that fact. And his character owns it, so that's probably why he's always been the most enjoyable character by a country mile since he's been introduced. But yes, they acknowledged June's stupid-ass pseudoscience bullshit. And the fact that it's framed as the catalyst for their team falling apart to begin with, that felt good to see her called out for that. Because it's not wrong. It was such a weird story point as well. Her believing in the tarot cards so hard that she manages to gaslight everybody into having a massive falling out. When you think about it, it's kind of ridiculous. And then of course there's the acknowledgement that D'Angelo is just fully obsessed with dragon healthcare above all else, even his friends. and that Alex is mostly just a snarky and mean person who is no fun to be around. Like, who would want to be with such an insufferable person as that? So the show does start to address the failings of the characters, and the way in which it left off this season, to me, suggests they're going to further address them going forward, which is good. I mean, it shouldn't have taken 7 seasons to get there, but good on them for trying. But that being said, the dynamic shift, the fractured friendship, stretched out way too long. But I think it could have been salvaged if it changed the story somewhat, but it didn't, because they had the team break up, but have them come back together every single episode to fight the villains only to split up again. That's not the way to do a team breakup storyline. You have to keep them separate for most of the season, but instead they wanted the best of both worlds, and it just doesn't work. However, on the other hand, not everything about the story was mediocre. I thought the actual story with Buzzsaw trying to get access to the Super Death Dragon, that was interesting. That dragon's always lurking in the back of every episode. They're slowly building up how powerful and destructive this thing's gonna be, even bringing in a fully separate super dragon that whoops the dragons of all the heroes at once. It kicks their asses, only to get one-shotted by the new dragon and killed instantly. Now that's how you build up your big villain. That's how you set up an unstoppable dragon. It reminds me of the introduction of the Red Death from the first film. They build him up as this big mystery, and then the reveal well and truly delivers with a huge moment that ups the stakes massively. And honestly, I was actually really surprised how cool that moment is when they lift the gate and the dragon comes out. So hopefully they managed to follow through with this being a massively awesome plot point, not something that they managed to defeat within the span of like a single episode. I mean, the whole season, the villain's arc has been exclusively building to this dragon being released. It's supposedly the most dangerous dragon of all time. And so imagine if the kids, who are not on the same page at the moment, managed to make this dragon look like a chump in its debut episode. Whew! I guess we just gotta have faith though. Nothing else we can do. On a minor note beyond that, the dialogue of the characters, it's improved, like immensely. Although I think it helped that we did not have the adult characters much this season. They were always cringy. And the fact that they're the parents and that they're in charge in positions of command made the relationship dynamics with the kids really, really unbalanced. And so you have the kids being badasses on one hand, but then when they interact with their parents, suddenly they end up like Luke Skywalker in A New Hope.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
I mean, just listen to that. So whiny and annoying. And that is what happens to me whenever you force the kids to interact with their parents on screen. Look at that early episode with D'Angelo. He's the most reasonable and the most rational member of the team. And yet here he is, in episode 1 or something, whining about how his dad doesn't understand him. You don't understand, Dad. I want to be a vet. Ugh, no, it just makes him look like a sook. And it makes his dad look like a piece of shit. But yeah, we'll move on from that now. And on a personal note as well, I'm very glad that Tom's mum was not in the season because I cannot stand her saying boyo. Boyo, boyo, boyo. Oh, it's got to be the worst nickname in the show. It does not sound right coming out of her mouth. And every time she says it, hey boyo, just makes me wish she'd say, hey kiddo, instead. Boyo sounds like it comes out of a 50s Looney Tunes cartoon or something like that. Hey boyo! And so yeah, for the most part, the dialogue has improved, especially since the parents aren't there. There was banter, there was zingers, and even the arguments between the kids felt more serious, just decent writing all around, and nothing more perfectly encapsulates that whole vibe than me somehow getting sucked into the damn romance episode. And I mean, romance with writing on this tier, you can just assume it's going to be dog shit. And on top of that, I do not give two figs about these characters. But that episode, I'm not gonna lie, it had me on the edge of my seat, and I'll fess up, I even yelled at the screen once or twice. I'm not ashamed, but that's neither here nor there. And so yeah, after 7 seasons, Dreamworks Dragons, it's kind of decent. Is it perfect? No way! And I'm still, after all this time, not sure why they didn't just use Hiccup's Kids or something like that instead of a modern day adaptation. Did the technology really add anything to this show? I don't think it did. But what the hell? I'm slightly invested now, and I have hope going forward. And I mean, it only took me 7 seasons. So with all that being said, that's the end of the video. And I would like to say that these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the season if you've seen it? Did you like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.